wait for folks to come on in. Hi, Allie. Thanks for joining us. We started reading Hood Feminism yesterday. Excited to do day 2 of this. Wait for more folks to join. If you're joining us for the first time, we're going to be doing 3 days of live reading, and then on Thursday we'll be with author Mickey Kendall for a live question answer with her. And if you are returning from yesterday, welcome back. Thanks for coming again. I have a couple sections that I'm going to read today in sort of towards the middle of the book. And then tomorrow we'll do some stuff at the end of the book. And then Thursday we will be with Mickey Kendall live. So thanks for coming on in and joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bulaong Ramiz-Hall. I'm the director of the Emily Taylor Center for Women and Gender Equity at the University of Kansas. We're bringing you this virtual e-reading program as part of our social distancing programs that we're doing. If you're on Facebook or Instagram, or just want to go check out our website, Emily Taylor Center is on Facebook, Instagram, and our website at KU. And we have a lot of virtual programs happening to hopefully keep folks entertained and busy and thinking about feminism and how to disrupt the patriarchy still while we're social distancing. So this week we're doing Hood Feminism e-reading by Mickey Kendall, notes from the women that a movement forgot. And we'll also have some virtual skill shares. I believe this week we're doing bread making. If you check out our Instagram, we have our whole schedule there, or on our Facebook. We have bread making. Our dear friend Ren, who works in our Office of Multicultural Affairs, hi Ren, is going to be teaching us how to do make Peruvian cookies. And then we have Mercedes Buthapania, who is another colleague from KU, who's going to be teaching us about face care and cleansing. So we have a lot of cool programs coming up, and today we're really excited about reading Hood Feminism and having author Mickey Kendall with us on Thursday. If you are interested in submitting a question for author Mickey Kendall for our Thursday live Q&A, you can submit questions to our Instagram via DM, or you can email us at emilytaylorcenter@ku.edu. Anyone who submits a question is going to be entered to win a free copy of her book that will be mailed to you wherever you might be social distancing by our local bookstore, The Raven, who's doing book deliveries. So if you're in Lawrence and need some books to read while you're social distancing, please contact The Raven. They are doing deliveries. So folks are joining, and I'm going to get started just to give a quick overview of this book and who Mickey Kendall is for those who are just joining. Mickey Kendall's an author, activist, and cultural critic focusing on media representation, feminism, and current events. Hood Feminism was published this year, 2020. Last year, her graphic novel, Amazons, Abolitionists, and Activists, also came out. So check that out if you can. Mickey Kendall's known widely in Twitter, specifically in the Black Twitter sphere, and is the creator of the viral hashtags, hashtag fast-tailed girls, hashtag food gentrification, and hashtag solidarity is for white women. And you can follow her on Twitter at KARNYTHIA. So a quick overview of this book. Today's feminist movement has a glaring blind spot, and paradoxically, it is women. Mainstream feminists rarely discuss meeting basic needs as a feminist issue, argues Mickey Kendall. but food security, access to quality education, safe neighborhoods, a living wage, and medical care are all feminist issues. All too often, the focus is not on basic survival for the many. Instead, it is on increasing privilege for the few. Prominent white feminists broadly suffer from their own myopia with regard to how things like race, class, sexual orientation, and ability intersect with gender. How can we stand in solidarity as a movement, Kendall asks, when there is the distinct likelihood that some women are oppressing others? In this potent and electrifying critique of today's feminist movement, Mikki Kendall draws on her own experiences with hunger, violence, and hypersexualization, along with incisive commentary on politics, pop culture, the stigma of mental health, and more. Hood feminism is a ferocious clarion call to all would-be feminists to live out the true mandate of the movement in thought and in deed. So, with that said, today I'm going to hop a bit around. I have two passages selected that I will read. And we're going to start with Black Girls Don't Have Eating Disorders. It's on page 119 if anyone has a book and is reading along. This chapter is a beautifully and sadly written piece about the way Black girls and women of color broadly may experience body shame and the way society impacts our ability to to talk about the ways that we might experience disordered eating, the ways that white women specifically take on our body image and are praised for it in ways that we are not, and we're shamed for it. And so I think it's just a really clearly written exploration of that. I work at a college, and so the section that I'm going to be reading talks a little bit about some pop culture and current events that I think is really relevant for students today, and also talks about Halloween, right? And we're in the midst of Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and something that Mikki Kendall explores is the way images of women of color, think geisha, think, sexy Native American, images of women of color get performed by white women, especially during Halloween, that hypersexualize us in a way that actually makes violence towards our bodies happen more frequently or normed in our society, right? And so that's something to really think about, that the empowerment of white women in the act of wearing maybe sexy Halloween costumes that are rooted in racism and stereotypes actually perpetuate a normed culture of violence against women of color's bodies. So that's a piece I just want to share as I head into this section, Black Girls Don't Have Eating Disorders. I'll read this, and then I'm gonna, if we have more time, we'll head to a section on how to write about Black women. Okay, so page 119 for anyone following along. When we talk about bodies and how they engage with the world and how the world engages with them, we have to ask ourselves why we love the trappings of so many cultures on white bodies, but not on the bodies of those who created these looks. When media criticizes Ciara's faux locks and then calls the same hairstyle edgy on a Kardashian, what message is being sent to young girls of color? If bandanas are a hot new accessory for young white women in the pages of Elle and a reason to throw handcuffs on a Latina in high school, then what message is received? What impact does it have to pretend that cornrows on white women are the same as a weave on Black women when only one is likely to lose their job over a hairstyle? We know colorism exists, but do we grasp the ways that the message that lighter skin is better are reinforced before we criticize bleaching? It's important to remember that this is all happening within a society that privileges lighter skin over darker skin, that prioritizes able bodies over disabled bodies, that sees being cisgender as the only option. Although not everyone will develop mental illnesses around their body image as a result of this environment, for those who do, the illness is often reinforced because it can appear to be a way to gain social status. For a marginalized person, fitting into a specific aesthetic can have benefits such as higher paying jobs, better access to education, and better treatment by society at large. It isn't just about being considered more attractive. For many, it could be the determinant of access to quality housing or even how they are treated by the legal system. We have to understand that every "it's just hair," quote unquote, "it's just a Halloween costume," quote, "it's just makeup" defense given for white bodies to be validated at the expense of those of color is another weight on the scales pushing mental health issues into marginalized communities. The trauma experienced may be lower in levels, but it can also be a constant stressor with no way to escape short of retreating from the larger world entirely. The truth is, no one is immune to trauma, but only some get what they need to handle the aftermath. Overwhelmingly, mental health resources are hard to access regardless of the issue. As a result, far too many people who are experiencing trauma find coping mechanisms that just displace the pain instead of addressing it. There's the potential stigma attached to the idea of needing mental health treatment or cultural expectations that someone in pain seek help from religion rather than psychology or psychiatry. For those who grow up in the church, prayer is more likely to be recommended than Prozac. And while there's nothing wrong with finding prayer comforting, it can't fix brain chemistry. A pastor might be able to provide counsel in the moment, at a hospital, or after a loss, but they are unlikely to be able to offer regular weekly sessions like a trained therapist. There's also the problem of finding culturally competent providers in a mental health system that is weighted heavily toward Eurocentric values and cultural norms. Having to combat racism, bias, and discrimination outside, and then deal with it in treatment can drive those most in need away from resources. And of course, in America, there are always the problems caused by a lack of adequate health insurance coverage. We know from recent research that PTSD is a serious problem for inner city youth across the United States. When situated in the context of geographic racial segregation, this also means that PTSD among youth is overwhelmingly a problem for youth of color. There's some evidence that PTSD can be a trigger for eating disorders. Does that mean that the two are always linked? Of course not. But what could we see if we considered the mental health of people in underserved communities the same way that we focus on the mental and emotional health of middle-class white people? Unhealthy coping mechanisms can range from disordered eating to cutting to addiction. When we talk about marginalized youth in mainstream feminist circles, we tend to focus on narratives that ignore how much of success is reliant on one having the internal resources to persevere. It's less about respectability narratives and more about empowering emotional health initiatives. Overeating and refusing to eat are unhealthy, but they are also common responses to anxiety and stress. What can be more stressful than living in communities that feel like they are under siege? How do you cope when your anxiety starts out as a symptom of unrecognized and untreated PTSD? I can't say whether my PTSD or my ED came first, but I know that when I was finally able to access therapy that specifically focused on treating trauma, I experienced a reduction in all of my symptoms. The myths of the strong Black woman from Chapter 1, the wise Indian, the submissive Asian, and the sassy Latina do more than show up in bad TV shows. They influence the perception that women who are not white do not experience a full range of emotions, much less suffer from the same mental health issues. It doesn't help that marginalized youths can be inundated with hateful messages in classroom material and on social media that undermine any sense of safety and security in ways that are not always readily apparent to people who do not experience the same kinds of oppression. Color blindness doesn't always work in casting, and it certainly doesn't work in community health initiatives that should be intrinsically feminist. After all, if we want to preach body positivity and equality, then we have to be mindful not only of the bodies that we celebrate, but also of the struggles that those bodies may have faced. White supremacy comes in many disguises, but the way it moves through spaces that claim to be body positive is perhaps one of the most insidious. The only way to challenge it is to pause and think critically and honestly about impact. That doesn't mean you should never appreciate a culture or participate in it, but you should be willing to interrogate the social and cultural context. While Rachel Dolezal is one of the more extreme examples, as she has essentially been appropriating an entire racial identity in service of a greater crime, the sad reality is that she likely started out with these claims as a way of making herself feel better without any concern for impact. We have to consider that representation matters, not just on screens or in books, but also in the community. Bigotry impacts the mental health of marginalized people, as well as the social and economic health. When your body is treated as fundamentally less human, when your emotional range is presented as too stunted to appreciate how you've been dehumanized by a movement that claims to be for you, then where do you turn to start healing? Sometimes the most feminist thing to do is to consider the idea of what makes you feel pretty, what makes you think yourself as sexy, isn't happening in a vacuum. It has real consequences for communities that you don't inhabit, and it's not excusable just because it makes the person appropriating feel attractive. Although body positive feminism is supposed to celebrate everyone, there are recurring issues of racism and colorism even within that community. Because white female bodies being adored and protected is a key aspect of maintaining white supremacist narratives, there is a side effect of alienating the very communities of color that started the body positive movement. When white feminism takes the center of any conversation about bodies, there is a tendency to replicate the same harmful aesthetics that prioritize certain body types to uphold as worthwhile and prioritize others as worth ignoring or outright shaming. Unsurprisingly, there's a lack of concern for the mental health of those being pushed out of the movement that was supposed to be inclusive. It's important to understand that stress and trauma extend beyond the direct behaviors of prejudiced individuals and impact communities. When people are surrounded by constant reminders that their identity is unwelcome and microaggressions can come at any time, anywhere, to anyone, it creates a lingering anxiety around your body's right to exist. It may seem like I am commingling disparate issues within the community, but for marginalized people, the messaging that our bodies are wrong and a problem to be solved by disappearing can feel constant. We regularly see clips on the news featuring unarmed Black, Latinx, Asian, or Indigenous people being killed on the street, in a car, in a holding cell, or even in a church. Not only does that bring up an array of painful memories, it can trigger something called vicarious traumatization. Even if the specific event has never happened to us directly, we may have witnessed similar experiences or know people in our communities who have been traumatized or killed in similar ways. Not only are their stories resonating in our minds, there's never a shortage of pundits getting airtime to justify the horror that has occurred. Victim blaming isn't just something that occurs around sexual assaults. And because the cycle of trauma never ends, you expect to be able to embrace the idea of self-care as a way to cope. To be able to rest your mind in the spaces that ostensibly exist online and off for that purpose. So it can be incredibly jarring to seek out safer spaces and find that you aren't necessarily welcome or cared for in the same way because of your identity. Marginalized people are more likely to have lower levels of access to mental health services than middle or upper class white people, and when they receive care, it's more likely to be of poor quality. There are several factors that create situations where marginalized people in high stress environments aren't getting proper care. In some areas, like Chicago, it can be as simple as a lack of availability due to closures of mental health programs. Even for those who still have programs available, Other barriers to care may include transportation issues, a lack of childcare, or difficulty taking time off work to attend regular appointments. We know that the mental health system is flawed, but that's not a good excuse for feminism to ignore the emotional health of women of color. Instead of parroting dehumanizing racist tropes about the strength of marginalized people, feminism has to be willing to interrogate its stake in upholding this aspect of white supremacy. Advocates for medical care should also be working on improving the status quo for those who are the least likely to both seek and receive treatment. Feminism has to center on those who are most vulnerable to the systemic disparities in conversations around getting help and caring for yourself, whether through the mental health system or at home. It's not enough to do a token highlight of the problems in marginalized communities once a year. Feminism has to advocate for better access to mental health care for everyone. It's also important to not offload the emotional labor of educating providers or communities onto the marginalized people looking for support. And it's key to include marginalized people in leadership roles, in campaigns, and in institutions that claim to be concerned with mental health. Above all, it's essential to do the work of lobbying legislators at all levels to improve access to quality mental health services in every area. We can't afford to keep pretending that mental health issues stop at the boundaries of whiteness. Instead, we have to be ready, willing, and able to embrace those for whom mental health is a struggle and to make sure that we aren't contributing to their trauma under the guise of being helpful. So, that was that passage. That was Black Girls Don't Have Eating Disorders. It's a chapter in the middle of Nikki Kendall's book, Hood Feminism. So if you all don't have this book, please go pick it up, especially if you identify as or aspire to be a feminist or be within feminist movements. That passage is really impactful, I think, as someone who has anxiety and sees a therapist. Yes, you do, Allie, really get that book. I think it's so important to really be honest about the ways that our mental health system and our health system in general is really damaging to people of color. If we even do seek help or seek support, it's rare to find someone who holds your identity or to be in a space where you're not afraid that you might be re-traumatized, right? I live in Kansas, and there are not many Black women therapists out here. I'm lucky to have found one, and I still have to drive 45 minutes to go see her. And I know that's a story that a lot of folks have, especially people who aren't in major cities, who aren't in predominantly Black and brown communities. Not to mention without universal health care, without access to, culturally competent therapists and care and doctors and all sorts of stuff. We often are having to advocate for ourselves, even in spaces where we're having to seek support and help. So I think that's just such a amazing passage and critique of feminism, which does not necessarily go to the depths and the roots of the trauma faced by women of color and communities of color outside of a savior helper framework, which white feminists really love to espouse. So that's just a really important chapter to read. Thank y'all for sitting through that. I see my dear friend Gabby in here. So for those of you who missed yesterday, I introduced myself a little bit and said that I started reading this book because I have some friends in my home city of Hartford, Connecticut, who decided to do a virtual book club, and Christiana and Gabby, and we meet once a week and talk about what we've been reading, and it's mostly women of color. And it's just been a really affirming read to go through this book, and I asked them, if you could read anything live to a group of people, what would you read? Yesterday I read the section that Christiana selected, which was around the sugar tax on sodas. And today I want to jump to the section that Gabby had mentioned needed to be read, which is how to write about Black women. It's page 85 if anyone has the book. So this section, and it's a short, about 2 pages that I want to read, Mickey Kendall changes the voice that she's writing in, which is amazing and really I'm just going to read it, but basically her voice is she's speaking to someone who wants to write about Black women, right? And talking about the criteria that they need. It's sarcastic, just so you all know. So maybe I'll try to read it sarcastically. If you are a writer or a journalist or any, I hear my baby crying, if you're writing in any form, this is definitely a section that you want to read and reread and reread again. And so I'll read this and then we'll end here. Okay. How to write about Black women. First, state your credentials. It's okay to be a woman, but not a Black woman. Their lived experiences are immaterial and can be dismissed as merely anecdotal. Make it clear that you're not racist or sexist. You are merely concerned about their plight. What plight? Well, just pick one. Or several. Marriage, children, lack of either, too much education, not enough education, welfare, whatever you think will sell. It only matters that you highlight their troublesome natures. Whatever it is, you must be sure to make it clear that they aren't like other women. They are failing to perform in some way that affects the whole of society, even if you can't quite explain how or why their personal lives are public property. Further, rely heavily on the idea of research that shows the problem is a problem. Never mention exactly when that research was done or who were the subjects of it. Too much context may unnecessarily complicate the conversation. And those pesky facts might get in the way of your ultimate goal. Utilize stereotypes whenever possible, preferably ones that tie into the Mammy, Jezebel, or Sapphire tropes. Describe Black women in ways that play up their sexuality and remove their humanity. After all, they are other, so their skin is a foodstuff. The space between their thighs is mysterious, and they have never, ever been innocent. No need to mention virginity or purity, even when speaking of Black female infants. Your focus must be on their sexuality. If you are speaking of Black mothers, make it clear that they need guidance, financial support, or salvation. What salvation? Well, that all depends on whether they work too little and thus are on welfare, or work too much and thus are neglecting their children. There is no point at which they can balance work and family because, again, they are other and that is not possible for them. They are emasculating and thus unworthy of relationships. Or they are the key to being masculine with their all-knowing sexuality that is present from birth. Unrapeable. They can be trusted to raise any children but their own and are sexually available until they become sexless. They exist to be support systems, whether for men of all colors or women of every color but Black. No need to mention their needs, hopes, dreams, or concerns. They have none, even if they do occasionally speak of themselves as real people with feelings. Their voices are too loud, too uneducated, or simply too aggressive. They are always angry about something, but their feelings aren't real. so they don't matter. Be sure to specify how reasonable you are in the face of their unreasonable behavior. Write off how you studied them at a safe distance while proclaiming that some of your closest friends are Black women. No need to know anything else about those close friends but their names, since all that matters is that you have them as proof that you know your subject and you're not racist or sexist. Contrast them with women of other races, always making sure to highlight that other women are real women, while Black women are simply Black. Feel free to make blanket statements about their religious beliefs, educational levels, income levels, and family dynamics. All of it is true because you say it is, and you are the expert in Black women, not any actual Black women. If they are offended by your words, remind them of your credentials and refuse to engage in a conversation with them until they can be less emotional. Point to their tone as a reason to doubt the veracity of their experiences. After all, they are only Black women, and thus they know nothing, own nothing, and are worth nothing but what you say they are. Well, if that is not a word, I don't know what is. So, thank you, Mickey, for that critique of the ways Black women, the ways we are talked about and written about. Yeah, that's just a hard, funny, sad read. Right? Whew. Hey, TK. Yes, she did that. She did that for sure. And I'm going to leave that there because I think that was enough for today. Once again, if you do not have this book, Hood Feminism, and you are an aspiring or identify as a feminist, please find your local bookstore, see if they're doing home deliveries, pick it up. If you're in Lawrence, Kansas, the Raven has copies. They're doing deliveries. And if you are interested, we are doing a free book giveaway. So you can submit a question via DM or email us at emilytaylorcenter@ku.edu. And you will be entered to win a free copy of this book that the Raven will deliver to you wherever you might be, social distancing. I hope that you all are safe. I want to give a shout out to all of the women in FEMS who are on the front line of COVID-19. I saw a beautiful video of a nurse today who's struggling in New York. And I think we don't talk often about COVID as a feminist issue, right? Where many women are caretakers, are nurses. We have many women who are bus drivers here, who are on the front lines and really taking care of us. And so, and many Black and brown women, right, who are working, especially in the major cities. So, just shout out to them, and think about how we might use feminism to move our dial forward as we get through COVID and think about the world we want to have after this is all said and done. So thank y'all for tuning in. Once again, Bulaong Ramiz-Hall, Emily Taylor Center for Women and Gender Equity here at the University of Kansas. I will be back tomorrow with a couple more passages. And then on Thursday, we will have author Mickey Kendall live with us Thursday afternoon. So please check out our flyer. Utility workers, yes, thank you. Please check out our flyer. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We are bringing you a lot of virtual programs, and we're going to plot to dismantle the patriarchy while we're in the comfort and safety of our homes. So join us. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.